watching lately? They're husky, hairy, huggable homos. Movie Bears Podcast.
Hello all and welcome to the Movie Bears Podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and along with my fellow husky, hairy, huggable homos and friends, we review films either current or classic on this show. And today we're coming at you with a current film that kind of spawns from a classic. We're going to be reviewing The Exorcist Believer as part of our kickoff to spooky season here on the show. We're also going to be discussing a new phenomenon that has been sweeping like wildfire through the United States. It is a show on Max. It's from the UK, but now available to watch in the US, called Naked Attraction. It's a big episode. There's a lot to talk about. But before we dive in, let me introduce you to my wonderful co-host. Jim Pugliafico is with us on the show. Hey, sweetie, how you doing?
I've been here. I'm here. I've been better. But I'm, for the next hour or so, I'm ready for us all to feel good about talking about movies, regardless of the movies we talk about or TV or whatever it is. It always feels good to be with you two and get together and talk. It's been a little while, right? Didn't we skip a week?
It has. So we were off last week. We were traveling for Western Exposure, XXL in Albuquerque, and we had like a little sliver of time in between those two things for the podcast, and then work shit blew up, and we were just unfortunately unavailable. But we appreciate y'all being flexible with us. Sometimes that's the thing; it needs to happen. We need to take a week off, but we're back, and as Jim said. Feeling good about getting back in the saddle. Babe, so glad that you're here. Welcome. Will Lindis is also with us. Hey, Will, how are you?
I've been here also. Jim, I thought you were about to bust into a song of some type when you started that. And I loved it. I love that we're all here. This is the time of year where we have a lot of things, between usually beginning of September through end of October. It's tough time for the Movie Bears podcast because it seems like this is the time where all three of our different work and festival and travel and vacation schedules all seem to like turn into this complicated web that we have to navigate just to get episodes out. But we navigate it, not just for y'all, but for us. We like doing this. We enjoy doing this. Guys, I'm really glad you're here and that we have, some kind of fun topics on deck for today.
That we do, for sure. And we're going to get to The Exorcist Believer, believe me. But before we do that, everyone, it seems like, is talking about Naked Attraction. We were at Western Exposure XXL over the weekend, and tons of people were like, oh my God, have you seen that new show on HBO? Which, of course, we know to be Max, but we still call it HBO. Seemed fitting to maybe talk a little bit about that on the show this week before we get to our main movie review. So, Jim, Will, are you ready to lift those pods and see the jangly bits underneath?
Yeah, let's do it. Whatever that music.
Yeah, let's not be dicks about this. Let's do it.
All right. So here we go. Our discussion of Naked Attraction. All right. So, Will, with anyone who maybe hasn't heard of Naked Attraction on Max yet, do us a favor if you don't mind. Give us the basic premise, the basic setup, and kick this conversation off.
Absolutely. So Naked Attraction is actually a UK show that sort of like a dating reality style show that began airing in 2016 and is actually running through now. And recently, HBO Max has acquired and has posted I believe the first 5 seasons, maybe 6, but the first set of seasons on its platform. Premise of the show is such: you have one contestant and a host who are standing in a room with 6 pods around them, each with a different color. And behind each of those pods is a completely nude person who is picked based off of something that the picker found attractive. So if it's a bisexual person, it might be a blend of male and female. If it's straight, it might be whatever they're attracted to, gay, whatever they're attracted to, whatever, right? And it starts off with just rising the platform, just so you can see, their lower parts.
They get right to
in
it.
full detail. Yeah, I mean, you're seeing everything down there. And then slowly it raises, and then you get to see their face, and then you get to hear their voice. And when in each round, someone's getting whittled down until one person is picked at the end to go on a date with the picker. That's the premise. The premise is sort of based off of the idea of, let's reverse sort of the dating cycle. Normally we get to know someone first, and we eventually have to figure out if the parts that are underneath the clothes are what we're looking for. But what happens if we just sort of start with that and then build backwards? Do we find someone that has a personality that we like? And there's a reason this is sweeping the nation, and it's because it's free nudity that I think a lot of people don't like. I think let's be honest, like a lot of queer people, at least in the circles I know, are able to quickly find what they need to find on the internet. But I don't think that that's necessarily true of everybody, right? And so this is a quick and easy way to find something right on your streaming platform that is just wibbly wobbly jibbly bits, right? And there are a variety of different body types on display here. Some big people, some little people, men, women. Not everyone is traditionally attractive. I will say the thing that I found, I guess to do my review of the whole thing, it's all right. It's an all right show. I'm not like scandalized by the nudity or whatever, nor am I necessarily tantalized by it. It exists in sort of just the reality show format. I think the thing that's most frustrating is of the 7 episodes I've seen, which includes the entire first season, and then an episode that Brad and Jim pointed out to me. The premise of the show, since you're basically trimming out people that you find less attractive, feels very judgy to me. Like, like a lot of like bigger people tend to get trimmed out. And even if someone's okay with bigger people, as one, if someone has a little bit too much body hair, which is sometimes a very, very like light definition, they get axed too. So I watched basically 7 episodes of people who have body types like mine or thinner than mine or less hairy than mine being said, I don't know. I don't think this is very attractive to me and getting the boot. So that wasn't a great feeling. That's not fun. So I don't know. This show is not for me. If I want to see like naked people, I've got a billion of them in the little device that keeps in my hand. Like, so, but I'm glad that this exists in that, like, I think there are some people that are going to get a lot out of this. I think there are some people that could stand to sort of see sort of slightly less stigmatized nudity, especially people outside of, to be honest, like the queer circles that I follow who are probably more comfortable with those types of things. So yeah, that's Naked Attraction. It's on Max. So I don't know. That's my thought on it. You guys have seen more episodes. So I'd be interested in hearing what y'all's thoughts were.
Jim, Will has given us a really great setup. Will, thank you so much for that, and kind of for some of your initial thoughts. Babe, do you feel similarly, or does it maybe work a little differently for you?
I think I agree with Will on some things, and I think maybe thinking a little different about some other things. First of all, I want to say that I was astounded to come across this TV show. I think, Brad, you might have heard about it first through friends and said, hey, we need to watch this show. And when it first came on, I was like, is this a real show? I'm like, can this really be a show I'm watching? Because, brought up, sure, we've seen nudity in movies. a bunch, and like you said, Will, as gay men who use the internet apps for dating and recreation, we've seen we've seen a lot. We've seen a lot more than the show shows. But to see it actually on TV in a setting that's like that feels like a primetime game show for all of Britain or whatever country it's being aired in, to see is kind of I think it's kind of groundbreaking, and it's getting a lot of reaction in both directions. Will, you kind of touched on something that I think the show is taking a lot of criticism for, and that is it's very. You said it was very like judgy, but it's really like it is the epitome of objectification of the human body and human body parts and features, right? The show starts with the objectification part of it, which we can't say it shouldn't happen or doesn't happen, because it does happen, right? I mean, it's in our nature as humans, as sexual beings, to objectify bodies and be attracted to bodies of whatever our body type is. And this show really dives into it, though, right? So you can see kind of the objectification is brought to the forefront, where the picker, as Will said, that the main contestant has to objectify these 6 potential dates in front of them and distinguish between them and basically eliminate them based on something they don't necessarily like about the body. So that feels a little icky sometimes, right? But when you think about it, it is something that we generally do in our own minds, whether we like it or not, whether we feel that it's right or not. It is something we do, and so the show is putting that in front of us and saying, "Hey, here's what we do. Now we're going to make a game show out of it." But one of the things I think the show does really well is it's normalizing like the human body and the human form, and taking away a little bit of the shame of the body, right? We have a lot of body shame in different cultures, certainly in our culture. I think the show can, work against that a little bit and try to take away like, hey, it's a body, it's a body part. It's a feature of your body, and like you said, it's a pretty diverse set of people that are on here. I think it could be even more diverse, but it is somewhat diverse. We've seen folks that are in wheelchairs. We've seen folks with prosthetic limbs. We've seen on the show, we've seen bigger people, smaller people. I think it generally skews a little bit smaller, which is kind of a turnoff for folks like us, but at least they're out there, and the show is willing to explore that. So I'm just astounded that the show exists. For me, we watch it I think it's best watched maybe in a small group of friends, to watch the show. I think you could have a lot of fun watching this show, and seeing all these body types, and it could just be a fun show to watch. I also give the show credit for, part of the show is when these 2 people select each other, or when the picker selects somebody, they go on a date. And the show kind of circles back to see how that date went. And they're not afraid to show like dates that go horribly wrong, dates that go very, very successfully. I think they show the whole gamut of what these dates can be. Because remember, they're picking based on just by physical looks alone. And so when they do finally get together and try to have a conversation and share, find common ground, sometimes it just doesn't work. So, I really like the show. I think it's fun. I think it's groundbreaking. After you get past the titillation of it, I think it is a lot of fun to watch.
All right. Well, Jim, thanks for laying some thoughts on us from your perspective. We have a question from Xander. Hey, Xander, good to see you. Xander says, aren't y'all on that show? We haven't been yet, but man, a Bear and Chub version could be really fun.
Only if they cast enough people. Like, if they cast it as it is, I know I'd be out in the first round. Like that's the thing. Like that's my problem with the show. But if you put a group of people that do have more diverse tastes on both sides of it and kind of spread that out, then 100% yes needs to happen.
Well,
I think it could. I think it could be something. I think I heard rumors that there's an American version in the works, potentially, which blows my mind even further. But remember, this is a Britain produced TV show, and I think their culture, their dating culture, or their in terms of what they find attractive in certain areas of the world differs slightly, right? And we're seeing a little bit of that.
Right.
If there's an
right.
American version of it, it's going to look like the cast members that are on like Big Brother or something like that. It's going to be a bunch of like.
That could be worse. You're right. It could be worse, Will.
I want them to prove me wrong.
Yeah. We'll definitely have to see, but I I think a bear version could be fun. Matthew in the chat says I 100% and down for a bear and chub version. So we'll have to send that idea in. But I will say this: we watched an episode last night from one of the later seasons where it got whittled down to two stocky, hairy guys who are a little bit doughy. And they gave us a whole lesson on bear, otter, and chub culture as like one of those like animated learning snippets, you know? And they even talked about like a club in Australia that's nothing but like, you know, fat, hairy men and the people who love them. So like, I think
Gorillas
it's cool.
In the mist.
Yes. I think it's cool, Jim, kind of to your point about this show, like normalizing nudity and maybe some non-stereotypical body types, that it's also maybe bringing some visibility, especially from like a queer perspective, to some of the different like flavors and dimensions that are out there that maybe normal straight people or the uninitiated, you know, don't necessarily think about. So I got to give the show credit for that. I randomly stumbled on to a recommendation for the show on Blue Sky, of all places. You know, everyone's excited to be sharing the smut over on Blue Sky right now. And someone posted a picture from the show and they're like, oh my God, you got to see this. And so I pulled up the show on Max and I watched about 10 minutes of it. And I'm like, holy shit, Jim needs to see this. Like, this is going to be a thing that we watch now. And the first episode I saw was the one where the man is a 75-year-old picker. And he likes women who are very curvy and voluptuous and on the older side, but he's also newly out as bi. And so he's kind of wanting to sample, you know, from like the male side of things. And I thought it was really cool, like how the process helped him to find somebody. And I don't want to spoil, you know, who he picked or how the date went or anything like that. But I don't know. It was just, it was kind of neat to see. I also think that I don't know, like as a gay man, I don't see a lot of, you know, vaginas and tits outside of like the local, you know, like nudist beaches or something, you know, when we've gone on vacation. Like that's just not something I'm normally exposed to, you know. So it's kind of neat too, even though I'm not sexually attracted you know, to vaginas. Or you know, big boobs or things like that. It's kind of fascinating for me to see like the straight and bi guys who are like really turned on by that. We watched an episode where like, you know, it's down to the picker and he's got two women to pick from and he's like half chubbing up as he's looking at these two women and trying to make a decision. And I don't know, it's awkward and it's funny and it's titillating and it's, I don't know, it's interesting. But I do agree. I do agree that being judged purely on physical attraction alone doesn't always feel good. But what I love about the show showing us the dates, 98% of those fucking dates end up in disaster. People ghost each other. They don't come back for the post-show interview. And I think it reaffirms for me that picking based purely on sexual attraction is never going to lead you to a good outcome. So ups and downs with it, I think.
And
but
it doesn't always lead to any sex or anything, right? I mean, there's just no, if that chemistry isn't there once they actually meet each other with, you know, and talk to each other, then like all that sexual attraction can kind of dissolve into nothingness.
Mhm.
What we find fun, Will, is we kind of play along. So we'll try to guess at each phase of each game. We'll try to guess. Okay, who would you pick to continue? Who's your favorite to continue? And not only that, but who do you think the picker is going to vote out based on what you, it's really fun to play along with. That's why I say, like, with a group of friends. I mean, with
Yeah.
us usually at night it's just me and Brad. Sometimes our roommate joins too to watch. But yeah, we're having a bit of fun with it. It's a time filler when we're not into some other series.
There is value in shows like that are like, and whether it's this or other shows that sort of fill that same gap, like the thing that are like, there's no narrative to this show. There's no, like, 18 episode arc. There's no like major emotional investments. You can just kind of watch it. You can watch half of it and then come back a couple of days later and not feel like you're like, oh, but if I stop this episode of Ahsoka in the middle, I'm going to lose like the emotional momentum or whatever. It's like, it does fill that gap really well. When we watched it, this was one we watched over the first season over a couple of nights while Scott was cooking and kind of like watching a little bit through the pass through, so it was like, it filled that gap. Like he could just kind of like, all right, cool. All right,
Yeah.
But he did, like, if he missed something, he wasn't like, oh no, what's happening?
Right. You can kind of,
it's a different experience, like cooking dinner while you're watching dicks and vaginas paraded around in front of the camera. But yeah,
it really is.
we found that, it's interesting to see too, like the cultural differences between like the community that we are in, right, with the bear gay community, and what in the US and what the Brit straight and bi and gay community kind of go for in physical attributes, right? In terms of body hair, that's one, right? Fitness level, body hair, and of course, in European countries as opposed to like the US, there's it's a higher percentage of like uncircumcised penises, right? So you're going to see a lot of that, which I think is good to, it's another thing that could be normalized. Like, say, hey, these penises come in all different shapes, sizes, and appendages.
Yeah.
Speaking of all different shapes and sizes and appendages, I've developed a new appreciation for the foreskin after watching this show. Most of the dicks have their skins intact, and that's not something I'm used to seeing here in the US. I mean, I've seen a few, don't get me wrong. But yeah, kind of
it's kind of like
to be
opposite,
exposed.
right? It's opposite of what we see sometimes in the US, where I think you might hear somebody in the US say, "Ooh, I'm not sure about uncircumcised dudes," right? That seems to be the exception, right, to the norm. Whereas over there, they see circumcised penises as not as attractive necessarily as uncircumcised. So it's just interesting to see those like cultural, I guess I'm going to say cultural or geographical, whatever differences in tastes.
Coming up on the next episode of The Dick Whisperer.
Xander's calling it the Great British Bang Off.
Yeah, they don't show any actual banging.
But I'd watch it if they did for
The Great British Pants Off.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. That's perfect.
Yep.
That's perfect. All right. Well, it's for better or worse, it's a show that exists. It's available for you to check out on Max.
You might even learn a new manscaping pattern. You know what I mean? Just
If I ever see another landing strip on somebody's pubes, I'm out. I'm out. Anyway, check it out. Naked Attraction. It's on Max right now. Jim, Will, we've also got a movie to discuss. As fun as it would be to keep talking about dicks and doughy guys with hairy chests, we should probably do that. How are y'all feeling about shifting gears and talking about the fucking Exorcist movie?
The devil. Dicks. You filthy fuckers.
Oh my god.
Well, the word from
All right, well, listen up, everybody. Here we
Okay.
shift things over. Go ahead.
Oh no, you had frozen up, so I was picking it up. Yeah, so you know, one of Linda Blair's famous quotes from the original Exorcist is "Your mother sucks cocks in hell," right? So there we go. Started
There
out
you
with that.
go. All right. So we're going to talk about The Exorcist, a believer, spoiler free, for about 8-ish minutes, and then we're going to go into spoiler territory. If you haven't seen the film yet, all good. Feel free to hang out with us. We'll give you fair warning before we open things up to spoilers. But all that said, here we go. Our discussion of The Exorcist Believer. All right, Jim, set this one up for us a little bit, if you don't mind, and give us your initial thoughts. Is this worth seeing in theaters, waiting for streaming, or worthy of skipping entirely in your mind? How did you feel?
Yeah, so let me set up the movie a little bit. This one is directed and co-written by David Gordon Green, who gave us I think the last two movies, maybe more, of the current Halloween series, right, in the last few years. He gave us Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends, as far as I remember, right? Is that correct? You guys can correct me on that. But so yeah, he's picked up these quote unquote horror, scary franchises in the past and revived them and kind of brought them into today's sensibility. So he's done the same thing here. Not that it hasn't happened before with The Exorcist from the original from 1973. That's 50 years ago. So now we've got The Exorcist Believer, The Exorcist Believer. The synopsis for this one is when two girls disappear into the woods and return 3 days later with no memory of what happened to them, the father of one girl seeks out Chris McNeil, who's been forever altered by what happened to her daughter 50 years ago. Well, no surprise here. It's all over IMDb and it's in the trailer as well. Chris McNeil is, yes, she is Ellen Burstyn, the actor who was in the original movie as Reagan's, the original girl played by Linda Blair, her mother from that movie. And so she's back in this one. And yeah, so that's where we have it. We have two girls now. It's like somebody put a script together and says, you know what we need to do for this new Exorcist? Instead of one possessed girl, we need to have two possessed girls. We'll make it twice as good. And guess what? It's not really twice as good, at least not for me. I didn't really vibe with this movie very much at all. I don't feel it brought anything new, anything really scary for sure that we haven't seen already before. And we're talking 50 years ago. We're talking about a movie 50 years old that I think is more disturbing and scary than this movie with two possessed girls in it. So to me, you've got to work pretty hard to make your new movie that's supposed to be amped up twice as much to be not as scary as that. So yeah, that was a big disappointment for me. Yeah, they brought back Ellen Burstyn. She's always great, right? I love her. I'm not sure they used her very well in this film. I just don't like the way her character, what her character had to offer in this movie. I think we'll wait for spoilers to talk about maybe some other cast members. A certain cast member. But I think I want to talk a little bit about Leslie Odom Jr. plays the dad in this movie, and I think he's fine. He's solid. Ann Dowd, that we've seen in The Handmaid's Tale. No, The Handmaid's Tale, right? Is that it? Or The Handmaid's?
Yeah, the Handmaid's Tale.
Handmaid's Tale, the series.
Yes.
Love her in most things, and I think she's kind of playing the same character that she plays in that series in this movie, and somehow it just doesn't work for me. Like I'm like, okay, I've seen this before. It just doesn't seem. I don't know. It just didn't do much for me. It felt like her going through the same motion she's been going through. the two girls are fine. Olivia O'Neill and Lydia Jewett as the two girls, Catherine and Angela. Yeah, there's just some kind of weird casting. The forcing of Ellen Burstyn back into this felt really forced. The script did not work. Didn't scare me. Kind of bored me in a lot of spots. So for me, this is a look. If you really need to see something like this, wait. I would wait for streaming. I don't think it's worth going to see in the theaters. There's nothing spectacular about it. It's a pass for me.
All right. Well, it's not always easy to pass on a film like that for you, Jim. I know you generally try to stay positive. So it must have really impacted you in some ways if you're passing on it.
Or just in
Um,
no ways.
or in no ways, in no ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, cool. Will, how about for you? Do you feel similarly that this was maybe not the greatest? Did this maybe trip all of your triggers? Where did you come down?
Yeah, I'm probably gonna fall at least as negative as Jim on this one. This is not a good movie. And there's some reasons for that. I think a lot of it comes down to two things. One of which I can talk pretty heavily about now, and that's just this movie just sucks the tension out of itself by its script not really giving the characters enough to do, and when it does give them stuff to do, it feels very paint by numbers. Like you can kind of see where things are going a lot of ways, and not in that like I'm still along for the ride, but more like you're watching the clock and sort of like ticking away until the beats happen. There are some pretty weird judgmental swings this movie makes. And all of that falls under the script. And the other thing is, and Jim mentioned it, there are a couple of actors that we can't talk about now that have no right being in this movie. If there's easily the inclusion of the characters that are, I would say, not central to the core plot, maybe suck like two stars out of this movie. Like it just feels so it's bad. It is just bad. And the thing is I like David Gordon Green. I don't like David Gordon Green doing horror. This is the guy that did Prince Avalanche and Joe. Like he makes some really good like sort of indie character piece movies. He does really, really good with that. But he's lately been pulled into this like horror nostalgia. He did Halloween Kills, Halloween Ends, now this, and man, it's just not good. I will say the actors, I was a little more favorable towards the kind of the core cast of this. I feel like I think Leslie Odom Jr., Ann Dowd. I really like seeing Norbert Leo Butz in this. He's someone who I enjoy seeing in things. And then both of the two kids, especially Lydia Jewett, who plays Leslie Odom Jr.'s daughter in this, I think they did a good job. I don't know that anyone did like a transcendent job that like overcame the material, but I do think they did what needed to be done. It's just the material, the movie that they were in left them nothing to do. So nothing against the actors in this. They showed up and they did their job. But man, this was such a slog. If you want to watch a better horror, like you're like, oh, I'm going to go out and see a horror movie this Halloween, which you should. Spooky movies are fun. There are more fun horror movies if you want to go that route, if that's the thing that trips your trigger. There are darker and more scary horror movies. There are more imaginative. They're more socially relevant. Anything that you could possibly take from this film, there is a better version of that is probably out either in theaters or just hit streaming or what have you right now. This movie sort of sits in the middle of all of them. And honestly, I think that if it didn't have the word Exorcist in the title, we wouldn't be talking about it. So this is a hard pass for me.
All right, hard pass from Will. Xander says this one sounds like a full waste of time. Xander, here's what I would say. You should always, we should always make our own opinions, right? See it, maybe see what we think. Sometimes it'll confirm, sometimes it'll deny. It's just a question of when and where you're going to see it, right? Are you going to spend the money to go see it in theaters right now? Maybe wait till this is like a Netflix movie or something. You can see it with your subscription. That's always kind of where we struggle. For me, I will were. I feel like this gave me what I was hoping to get out of an Exorcist movie, which was basically watching a possession, watching spiritual authorities fight against said possession, and seeing the chaos that ensues. So, along those grounds, I feel like what the movie promised, I got. I have to give this movie some credit. It did some really cool things with practical effects when almost, you know, all horror movies that I've seen recently right now are using a lot of CGI. This movie leaned very heavily on the practical stuff. It actually took me back to the Evil Dead movie that we saw at South by Southwest with some of the practical things they did with like the blood and the gore. And so that was kind of neat to see. I think that the story, unfortunately, is not the strongest in this film. In fact, it's a little bit of a retread, I think, of the first film. It's just instead of one girl, now we have two girls. We've upped the stakes. There's two girls now, and only one can maybe live. We don't know. Question mark. What's going to happen? It's kind of interesting to see some of that play out, and I'm going to bank some time for spoilers because that's the one thing I particularly want to talk about is how all of this kind of resolves. But you know what? Fuck it. It's spooky season. It's Halloween time. There are a lot of better horror films out there, but like, I don't know, 95% of them, you probably have to like watch at home. If you're wanting to go out and see a movie during spooky season at movie theaters, I think this is a good one for you to check out. Just know, it's an Exorcist movie. It's not going to like redefine the horror genre like maybe the first one did because it's been 50 fucking years and there are no original ideas left. It's just how you take bits and pieces of other ideas and combine them, right? There you go, Xander. Xander says cheesy movies with friends. That could potentially work. Perhaps. But yeah, I mean, not the best, but also not the worst I've ever seen. Jim, Will, I know typically we would maybe kind of talk more spoiler free about this one for a while, but I think it's really difficult to do that at this point. Are y'all good with just making that jump?
Hold on.
Let's cross over.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Well, spoilers for The Exorcist Believer are about to happen. If you haven't seen this film yet and you value your innocence where the plot of the movie is concerned, this is your time to probably say adieu for the rest of the show. No plugs this week since we also talked about Naked Attraction up front. But come on back, finish the episode once you've seen the film, and let us know your thoughts on social media. We'd love to hear from you about this one. But spoilers are completely fair game. They're happening now. This is your last chance. Step away. Okay, you earned it if you're still here. So this movie sort of comes to a head with the demon that's possessing the girls basically telling the parents, you've got to make a choice. It's one girl or the other. You have to decide. And so it puts the parents of these girls in this position where like they're trying to like
negotiate,
champion their own kid, like making it out of this ordeal. And when one of the fathers just decides to fucking save his own kid to the detriment of the other, that family gets fucking punished. The demon outright just kills their kid, lets the other girl live. So how do y'all feel about sort of this idea that like the demon punished them for like their selfishness? How did that kind of work for you or not?
Interesting idea, but it felt very muddied at the end. Like, didn't it go swing one way and then swung the other way? At one point, like, didn't it look like the one girl was going to get saved And then, oh no, all of a sudden now that other girl whose family, you know, you know, lobbied for her is now going to be punished. I don't know. It swung a couple. It seems to me it just the ending was kind of a mess. It's just muddy. I actually wanted both girls to die at the end. I think that would have been better. Um, Here's the thing: I didn't care. It's like I don't think the movie set up what the hell was happening to. I mean, we know it's a possession, but like, why were they in the woods for 3 weeks? What happened to them in the woods? Did any of that really get explained at all, or did they just come back possessed? Um, it just didn't it didn't set itself up enough for me to care about the girls, or even really the families of the girls. So there, I said it. Both girls should have died.
I mean, there's something to that. Like, I didn't need to see kind of, so they're out there. It's those 3 days of lost after they do that. And they're just sort of wandering and they end up 30 miles away or something like that. I didn't need to see what happened during that time for personally, because I understand that, like, basically they say at some point, like, they get pulled to hell, then they get brought back to do stuff like that. They do some little explainy stuff for it. It doesn't matter though, because the important part isn't the mechanics of what happens with this demon. The important part is the relationships that we're supposed to have with these characters. And we're immediately put in the position where one of the parents seems like the shitty parent, and we know that he's going to do shitty parent things, in contrast to the better parent who's doing the better parent things. And so because of that, it sucks some of that tension out. It sucks some of the, like, look, let's talk about that ending part, right? One of the kids, because her father says, I want you to live, gets her punishment is she's now spending an eternity in hell. Like, that's the ending of the movie. It's not that she dies, it's she's dragged into fucking hell, like the other daughter. And I think we're supposed to think of that. The movie wants us to moralize that as, like, he was the bad one. He did the bad thing because he's been kind of the shitty parent all the way through, and we don't trust this guy. I think that there's a more mature version of this movie that makes that same case more sympathetically and compellingly, and makes you feel like, gosh, what would I do in that situation? Would I have the wherewithal to not save my own child if I knew that it would sacrifice another child? I don't think that this movie really did a good enough job of that. It painted everything as black and white. It does the same thing when it really moralizes, like, the main character's decision at one point. Like, at the beginning of the movie, we find out that the Leslie Odom Jr.'s wife is severely injured, and he has to choose either saving his daughter or his wife, and he chooses to save his wife, and that isn't what happens, and the daughter's the one that lives. And we're supposed to look at that as, like, this big reveal that is a bad decision that he made. The movie sort of moralizes some of that, and instead of complicating it and making it nuanced and making it, like, have some of that emotional weight, and then once all of that was resolved, everything just feels kind of, I don't want to say hunky-dory, but it ends on a beat that doesn't feel as nebulous or as strained or as whatever as it could be. So again, this movie picks a lot of lanes, but doesn't really explore any of them. And that's my problem.
Now, it popped into my mind, Will, when they were in that section, when they were talking about how the dad had to make a choice and he told the doctor, save my wife, whatever. It popped into my mind, like, is this movie a veiled, like, anti-abortion, like, is there a statement buried in this movie somewhere, either pro or anti, pro-life or anti-abortion in this movie? I bet you somewhere on the internet there's probably a think piece about this movie and pro-life.
I have a full screen of them pulled up right now.
Oh shit! Because I had that thought, and I'm like, oh, this movie, please don't go down that road. Please don't do that, because I don't want that explored in this movie. It's not what I came to this movie to see, to be proselytized about your pro-life or whatever position. But it kind of felt a little icky at that point in the movie, and I don't know that it ever came back around for me.
Now, one thing I will say that this movie did well, that I think it should be applauded for, is that I think movies like this tend to fetishize one specific type of spirituality. If it's not something that kind of lands under that either blatantly like Catholic or potentially like veering into Protestant and these types of things, but it tends to be towards a specific flavor of like Christianity, then it's usually considered as bad. But we do get a character in this who uses sort of like a variation of like Haitian voodoo as part of the her own survival from some things that she went through, as well as part of this. And it's handled very not only respectfully, but it's given the same import and power as like the kind of the more like Catholic
Roman
Catholic
Mhm.
part of it. So I think that was, if I could say that there's like the best part of this movie, I think it was that. And if anything, there's probably a better version of this movie for me personally that really lets that character have a little bit more screen time and a little bit more to do, and cuts out the two cameo characters who feel like such a detour for this movie.
Which we can talk about now.
Let's launch into that as a wrapping point for this discussion. That seems fitting. So we have two legacy characters show up, of course, the mom from the first movie, and her whereabouts are questioned for the entire film. Where the fuck is Reagan? Reagan shows up at the end. Will, it sounds like that didn't really work for you. Is that right?
It didn't. And the reason for it is this is a set of characters that only have significance to us as people who saw the movie, but that significance doesn't fully exist to the characters within the movie. So we care about it only because, like, we get those, if I'm going to use the word, member berries, right? But the characters themselves are just like, you have to deal with, like, this guy's daughter is being possessed. And he has to put up with this woman going, like, for fucking the entire middle of the movie, just like, I don't know where Reagan's at. I don't know where my daughter is. And again, we're supposed to pick up on that, but it takes us out of the immediacy of what's happening to the character, because the character doesn't give a shit about what's happening to Reagan. Like, because he's never seen The Exorcist, because The Exorcist doesn't exist in that franchise. And if anything, the Ellen Burstyn character, she kind of shows up, drops a little bit of narration, and then gets her ass immediately kicked and moved out of the movie. And so it doesn't even feel like a cool, respectful homage either.
No,
it feels,
didn't they blind her in this movie?
They blind her. Yeah. And again, I there is a better version of this movie where you, one, take those two characters out entirely, just strip them out of this movie. They added nothing. And two, honestly, if you're going to do that at that point, and I'm okay with this, it doesn't even have to be an Exorcist movie. It could be called just, like Believer or whatever. I don't know. But still, if you're going to do a new Exorcist movie, like, you follow the idea of what it means to be possessed and what it means to be the person that's trying to deal with your possession. That's what the core of this is. It's not about, like, oh my gosh, where's Reagan? No one gives a shit,
Yeah, you're right. It was a total, it felt like Linda Blair didn't want anything to do with this film. And they somehow convinced her to come back if she only had one touching scene with her mother, right? That was it. It really didn't, I don't think it helped the movie at all, other than to say, oh my God, that's Linda Blair. That's the original Exorcist girl. Look. I didn't really dig that. I mean, yes, did I enjoy seeing her on the screen? Sure. But I don't think it helped the movie at all. Neither did the, this movie does some things with scares that really irked me. Like it shows these, think of like a strobe light flash of like a demon or I don't know, some vision or something of, exactly, like a screaming face for like half a second with really loud like that's like fucking haunted house shit. Like, it's really bad. It doesn't really
So
build much scare
I,
for me.
I want to circle back to the Linda Blair thing. So for
Oh,
me, I actually was hoping that she was going to be part of the film in a much more meaningful way. Like, how cool would it have been if like Regan showed up to try and help these girls with their possession, and the demon tried to like get its hooks back into her, and
oh
she's
yeah.
in a battle against the demon. Like that
Yes.
would have been crazy fucking cool. And I was like, they're keeping this a secret. That's what this movie's going to be. I can't wait. And then it turned into what it was, and a bit of a
They still
disappointment.
could have kept
but-
it a secret and had that exactly what you just said,
Yeah.
Brad, in this movie. And I would have cared a lot more about the girls, about the character, about the possession, about winning over the possession, all of that stuff. But
Yeah.
it didn't really happen. They just in what they like I said, it seemed like Linda Blair was coerced somehow to be in this movie, and she said, "Look, I'll do one scene for you guys, okay? One scene. That's all you're going to get me for." And they had to figure out how to put it in.
And it goes to that same, if before I said my biggest problem with this movie really comes from the fact that it feels like everything is sort of a half measure, right? The scares are a half measure, the story's a half measure, the fun elements don't really go all that, the weight of it doesn't really go there, and the cameos like are half-assed. This is the type of thing where a movie, to me, to be really good, needs to, even if it's the most simple story possible, two people sitting on a bus having a conversation, that's the movie. If it commits to that and says, all right, we're going to make this the most compelling conversation with great kind of back and forth power dynamics, you can make an incredibly entertaining movie out of just knowing what you're doing and doing it competently. But I hate it when a movie tries to do a little bit of all things and is afraid to really plant a flag. A way better version of this movie that came out this year is Talk to Me. I think that is the possession movie that Exorcist should have been, because I think that it committed to its stakes a lot more, and it committed to its characterization a lot more.
Will, your bus movie, two people talking on a bus, Linklater actually made that for you a while back. It was called Before Bus Stop.
Yes, before bus stop, after bus stop, beyond bus stop return,
Which is a series, by the way, we have to revisit.
Yeah, it really
For real,
is.
for
The
real.
Before trilogy is so good.
I think bottom line for me, I think the best that could come out of this movie is if they just recut it into a 60-second chapstick commercial with those two girls. Like their lips were a fucking mess. Like that would be an amazing chapstick commercial. But instead we got a really not so great movie.
It wasn't the best film for us. Who knows what it'll be, for other folks. They may enjoy it more than we did. But, cool that 50 years later, I guess we got another Exorcist movie. Definitely looking forward to getting out of the hell of movies that we're in right now and getting into more of the prestige films that are coming as we get closer to Oscar season. Hopefully we get some better ones coming down the pipeline, but we'll see. So listen, if folks want to chat with us between now and next week, when we're going to be reviewing Killers of the Flower Moon, let's talk a little bit about how people can connect. Jim, where can people find and connect with you?
They can find me at JJP Out West still on X, formerly known as Twitter. Can find me on Facebook under my name, Jim Puliafco. They can also find me on Blue Sky under AZ McLovin. They can find me on Letterboxd at JJP Out West. But I do want to say one way people can find us is, and it happened a week ago, is in a bar in Albuquerque.
Yes,
We should
talk about that for a
this.
second.
We should
Yes,
talk about this.
yeah.
We were lucky enough to get together with some fans of the show or listeners of the show that we know, and can we mention the names, Brett? I guess we can.
Oh,
right?
totally. Yeah.
Cisco Salgado, met us there at the bar. So we got to talk to him while we were in town for the balloon fiesta.
He's an
Will,
amazing fucking guy, by the
yeah,
way.
he's a
He's
great
so fun.
guy. Hopefully we get to spend more time, chatting with him sometime, and he maybe gets to join us again on the show in chat. That would be great. Will, another person who was actually on the show, joined us, Rusty Tiddenberg, the subject of the Harrod Blank film. Why
Why can't
can't
I
I
be
be
me
me
around you?
around you?
Mhm.
Yeah, we got to meet up with them there, and oh man, it was an amazing night. And that's one of the great things about sometimes on our trips here and there, we get to run into people in our community, and that was a great night. Brad, you may want to say more about it, but
Yeah, absolutely. It was really cool meeting Cisco. Like I said, super cool guy. His husband's really great too. We unfortunately didn't get to meet his husband. He was in New York for some work travel. But I've chatted a bit with him, and they're stellar guys. Next time we go to Albuquerque, I think we're all gonna have to like have dinner or something and then maybe hit the bars
yeah,
again. But I was really touched that Rusty came out to meet us.
yeah.
Rusty was super fucking cool when we got to interview her at the Aglift brunch during
Yep.
South by Southwest Film several years ago. And Aaron was great too. But when we put on Facebook that we were coming to town for the balloon fiesta, Rusty was one of the first people to reply. And Rusty was like, I really want to see you guys. How can we make that happen? And so, we were only there for like a day and a half. It was like a whirlwind trip. So we were just like, hey, we're going to be at this bar for like an hour and a half. If anyone can make it out to see us, we'd love to say hi. And Rusty made a very special trip out to see us and connect. So, Rusty, Cisco, thanks for making our night. Thanks for helping to make our trip. Always great to connect with you folks. And, Will travels a bunch too. We travel a bunch. We love to meet you all when we have that time and opportunity. So next time, Will, you're like, I'm going to Denver for a work trip. If you're in the area, folks, and you hear that, maybe knock on Will's DMs and see what he's up to.
We have a
Uh,
blast whenever we get a chance to meet up with people that we've met through the show or through our film circles, either when we're in our different areas or when you happen to be in ours. Every single time, it's just like grins ear to ear, and I feel like I've met you a bunch of times in person, even though this is our first time to meet in person. And so, yeah, absolutely. Like if you're a listener to this show, we're we don't bite. I mean,
No,
unless
I
you
mean,
want us to.
but we enjoy.
Really
We
like
do enjoy meeting in person. Be respectful, of course, but
Yeah.
So yeah.
and anyone who's not familiar with Rusty and that film is out there on streaming right now. If you've got the Canopy app, which I would wholeheartedly recommend you get. I mean, if you've got a library card, you get free movies on the Canopy app, absolutely free. Check it out. It's streaming on there, and it's also available for rent on Amazon Video. Why can't I be me around you? Fantastic documentary film, character study of what it's like struggling through the trans experience. Just fantastic film.
Absolutely agree. Babe, thanks so much for bringing that up. Will, where can folks find and chat with you before our show next week?
Yeah, you can find me all over the internet. I am on Blue Sky, and I'm on TikTok and Instagram. And Letterboxd under some variation of at the Movie Bear. I'm on Facebook. Just look for William Lindis and send me a message first, so I know that you're a real human being. Yeah, just connect with me where you feel the most comfortable, because I'm more than likely there. I have not yet deactivated X, but I'm probably not going to be looking at that very easily or readily. So maybe I'll be a little bit slower to respond to you there.
All right. Well, thanks so much. And folks, you can find me in one of two places. One is Facebook, of course. I'm still using that. Um, Brad Harris. It's my name. Look it up. I'm the chubby bearded dude who probably has other friends in common with you. Again, though, just send a message first. Let me know you're a real person. That would be great. And then the second place you can find me is on Letterboxd at iBradPro or Brad Harris. Uh, Guys, it's mid-October. We've got 2.5 months left. Yeah, till the end of the year. And
Yeah.
and if I make it to January 1st, that'll be a whole year of logging every film. So I know I won't actually get a prize. Will, we talked about this on the show last time. But it does feel good to be able to whip out Letterboxd whenever I need to and reference something. A question came up the other day was what were your 3 favorite movies of the year? We were at Western Exposure XXL. And I was like, well, shit, I know Barbie's one of them, but fuck, what were the others? And I'm like, my phone's in my hand. So I went to my Letterboxd, sorted it by rating, and boom, 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 boom. There they were. It was so
Hey,
easy.
Brad,
It was awesome.
what was your answer?
Yeah. My answer is go to my Letterboxd at iBradPro. You can see all the movies that I rank and rate, and you can see my favorites there. And maybe tune in for our top 10 films of 2023, which will be coming up not long after the new year. I'm sure we're going to be talking about those. And Will, I'll answer you online if you don't want to go through all the work. But I'm being coy.
But as a preview, Barbie's probably close to or on that list.
And
all right.
that is the nice thing about Letterboxd. It really is. Like, with as many movies as we see, like I've got 130 just 2023 release films, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's no way I'd remember those at the end of the year. I'd remember like 5 of them.
Right.
My brain's not that good. So I the list does the work for me. So 100%, Brad, that's the reward.
Yeah, certainly. So I will tell you this. Barbie is very much on that list of 3. So there you go.
Very nice.
You got it.
And I'm on the Letterboxd page right now. I'm at letterboxd.com/iBradPro/film/diary. And I can see every film by date that Brad has ranked and reviewed this year. So if anyone wants to join me, that's where I'm at right now.
All right, we're gonna stop pimping out my Letterboxd. It's only because I don't have any other socials that I want to share. Like I'm on X still. But like I'm not really interacting with anybody there, and I'm on Blue Sky, but it's for porn, so like I'm not going to share that, unlike some people. So anyway, folks, thanks so much for tuning in with us. Xander's even got a link in the chat. Thanks, Xander. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. Great chatting with y'all. Xander and Matthew, wonderful to have you in the live chat. Most folks access the show after the live broadcast. 99% of folks are coming from Apple Podcasts and Spotify, etc. Will, yes, you are correct. You private chatted me. You got it. You figured it out. My top 3. But just if you are accessing through digital tape delay, we still want to hear your thoughts too, even if it's not live on the show with us. Drop us a note on Facebook, drop us a note on X, tell us what you thought of The Exorcist Believer or Naked Attraction. Would love to hear what y'all think. We'll see you next time for our review of Killers of the Flower Moon. I can't talk. And yeah, just have a great rest of your week. We'll see you next time, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.